very good morning from the sports desk. The international rugby season has finally arrived for the Southern Hemisphere nations, and the world champions, the Springboks, will be in action against Australia. That is in the Rugby Championship battle at Loftus Versfeld this afternoon. This year's Rugby Championship has been shortened due, of course, to the World Cup, which has created a logistical nightmare for the Boks, who have had to split their squad in two for the test against the Wallabies at home and against the All Blacks in New Zealand next week. Let's get into the rugby conversation with former Springbok lock Juandre Kruger and veteran rugby writers Brenden and Liam Carme. I've got Liam Carme here with me in studio. A very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time this morning. It is an important conversation that we need to start having, of course, as we build up to the World Cup, South Africa's title defense. Juandre, I want to start off with you. We have a shortened version, once again, 4 years later, of the Rugby Championship. And the last time we had a similar setup, the South Africans went all the way to win, firstly, the Rugby Championship, and then secondly, the World Cup. And we are asking that question, at least to our viewers as well this morning, can we see it happen again, especially with everything we've seen taking place in terms of our coach's future, one. Secondly, our captain suffering from injury. Thirdly, us having a fly-half crisis. Do you have the confidence and the faith in the Springboks, Juandre, to emulate what they did in 2019?
Yes, you can never write off a Springbok team. If you look at, we as a team, we want to continue building momentum. And, there's no better place for the Springboks to start off their first test match at Loftus. If you look at Cape Town's raining at the moment, we know that Eddie Jones doesn't like Loftus Versfeld. Even if you go back to the Reds, I'm talking about a long time back, his team used to struggle there. So, yes, the Springboks team have changes. And, those are opportunities for players, and they do understand the responsibility when you pull over a Springbok jersey over your head. So, and no better player than Duane Vermeulen to fill the boots of Sia. His experience, he came back, played for the Bulls at Loftus, and as a player, even when he played back for the Stormers and the Cheetahs, he used to play good rugby at Loftus. So, got a great captain leading the team, and it's one of the first steps for us, building up for this World Cup.
Brenden, Eddie Jones doesn't like Loftus. That's from, franchise level, international level. But we're talking about an Eddie Jones that has been to a World Cup final, has coached an England team and now is coming back to coach an Australia team. An Eddie Jones that was once in the technical team of the Springboks when they were playing at Loftus. So he would have gotten, I would say, acclimatized to the conditions that he's now coming to bring his Australian team into. Yes, the guys from Down Under do have a bit of an issue with playing on the high veld, but we're talking about a completely different Australian team here under a totally different technical leadership.
Yeah, and I think one thing Duane said yesterday in his press conference was that, when Eddie's in the chat, there's going to be surprises, and he doesn't like Loftus. He's never won at Loftus as well, and he is a wily character. There's always going to be something up his sleeve. Liam and I were chatting about it in our podcast this week. You're always going to get something different from Eddie. But saying that, we're on the high veld. The Boks are favourite high veld as well, and as long as they can adapt, because this is a bit of an unpredictable Australian team. We haven't seen them play. You can't really go to past videos. So as long as the Boks can adapt on the day, they're a settled squad. They know what to do, and I think I've got a lot of confidence they'll come through again.
Just how settled are they, though, Liam? You've got a Jean that has literally just touched down in the country to play with, his compatriots, and I don't even want to call him new because he is South African, Joburg born. And then you don't have your captain in Siya Kolisi there. You don't have your Juandre Pollard who is there. In fact, you have a guy that is coming in and is trying to prove why he deserves to be the guy that wears that number 10 jersey in the opening match of the World Cup a little later on this year. And then you've got a Jacques Nienaber who now has a future beyond the Springboks after the World Cup. So just how settled are we as a Springbok team?
Look, there are lots of unknowns. It's not just the Wallabies who come here with a new coach and we don't know if he's going to play the sort of style that England played, or is he going to look at the players at his disposal now, because obviously they play Super Rugby, where they'll sort of lean more towards that or not. In terms of the Springboks, I think the one big question mark about this team will be the combinations, because they are a little bit unsettled, as you well pointed out. But then again, it's a huge opportunity for them. Next week, a different team will play New Zealand. If these guys can get onto the front foot, make a name for themselves, as it were, you could actually play next week as well. So if you play against the Wallabies in Pretoria and the following week in Auckland, that's massive for you. And there are a couple of players, at least 5 of them, will make the starting lineup next week. So, well, that's at least what the director of rugby told me. So, there's something to play for them.
This is a conversation we'd like you guys as well at home to get involved in. As you can see there on our screens, we're asking you that question. Can the Springboks do what they did in 2019, win the 3-match Rugby Championship and then go on to defend their title and essentially make history by becoming the first team to win 4 world titles? Well, we're asking you to call in 011-537-9431. That is the number we're asking you to call into, and we'll take your calls and we'll hear your thoughts. In fact, you can even maybe, share your opinions about what the gentlemen on our panel this morning are saying. Juandre, I'm going to come back to you, and we're going to zone in now on John Klein. The experience, at least as close as he does have in recent times, to understanding the South African game is having played in the United Rugby Championship, which his Munster team went on to win against the Stormers. Does he have a lot to prove as a South African that is coming back from having represented Ireland not so long ago? Or do you feel that we just need to give him a bit of time, allow him to settle in with the Rugby Championship, and then we ask him questions getting into the World Cup, should he make it?
So that was a strategic move from Russ. You won't see a lot of coaches that go through that whole process after him being in Ireland and then, having that 3-year break and then, qualifying. It's almost like a breakaway play and back into the setup. So John's a great player. I played against him when he was at Munster as well, when I played for Toulon. So bringing a player from the Northern Hemisphere into the squad and having a World Cup building up, yes, there's many locks, and yes, there's some players that's going through injuries. And so having a player with a bit of Northern Hemisphere experience into your squad is good. And, Test match rugby is more tight rugby. Yes, it could open up against Australia, a little bit more running rugby, and especially New Zealand as well, and Argentina. But, normally a test match is quite tight rugby, and, there's a lot of kicking around it, but the game can open up. And, John's a versatile player, he's a tough player, and I think it was a good, smart move by the coaches to bring a player like that in. And, to share his experience as well, because you're never too old to learn as well. So he can, playing alongside, Marvin, he can, help Marvin with a few things as well on the field. And then, no better player than Argus Diamond, if there's any crisis or anything, to bring a player like him off the bench that's won a World Cup, that's still young, that's, he's fresh, he's come out of an injury, hasn't played too much. So, yes, I do believe we've got a good combination there that can actually make a difference and, put the Wallabies under pressure and line out time.
Brenden, we have a guy that's coming in John Klein, looking to prove his worth, looking to show that, he definitely is a South African rugby player, that he is a Springbok. And then you've got a guy that has long proven just how amazing a Springbok he is and has been. And I speak of Duane Vermeulen. And what a better time for him to lead his country in what is arguably probably his swan song tournaments. He's on the other side, of course, of the ages of 30, rather. And he's somebody that is probably starting to now look at life after rugby, and this potentially could be his very last World Cup. What is up for grabs for him? What is at stake for him? Is there anything for him to prove going into this World Cup and even into this Rugby Championship?
Well, yeah, I think for any player, there's a lot to prove. I think Duane is a perfect example of a professional rugby player. And ironically, him and John have done very well in terms of the way the Irish system has looked after them. Jean has he said to me this week he was living the dream. He's just so happy to be in the Boks squad again. So I think he's got a lot to prove. Duane, of course, he's the ultimate professional. He's a guy who never takes a step back. We jokingly refer to him as Thor because he's almost like a superhero in that Boks team. And while he has been, there's younger guys coming through, and he is almost at the twilight of his career. He's still a guy that the Boks can fall back to very easily. He's a guy who commands respect on the field and amongst the referees. And ironically, he's older than the referee today that's going to be reffing the game. So that just shows you how much he means to Springbok rugby.
I just want to put it out to the viewers, of course, once again, we are calling for your input, your opinion. Just, tell us if you genuinely think that South Africa can do it once again. It is only New Zealand that has gone on to defend their title. And of course, that was 2011, and they defended in 2015. South Africa looking to do the same thing, but also one step further, looking to be the first nation to win 4 world titles. Can they do it? The last time they won the World Cup, we were playing the Rugby Championship shortened version, 3 matches. So we're asking you to call in on 011 537 9431 to just share your opinion and then get in onto the conversation I'm having with my panel this morning. Of course, former Springbok log Juandre Kruger, as well as esteemed rugby writers Brenden and Liam Carme. Liam with me in studio here. Do we have any reason to start nearing our fingers towards the panic button where Siya Kolisi is concerned? The last time we were in this position, it was Jean de Villiers. He did make it for the World Cup. Will Siya make it for the World Cup? Or are they just trying to sell us a story by saying that his rehabilitation is up to standard?
Look, it's obviously going to be a big issue if it becomes touch and go with weeks leading into the World Cup. I think the plan is, this is the hope that they've expressed, and let me say that they've expressed this hope with some confidence. So they're very confident Siya will at least be fit for one of those last 2 games leading into World Cup. They'll have warm-up games. The second last game is against Wales. That'll be in Cardiff, and then the last game will be against the All Blacks in London. He will have to play in those games, or at least in one of those games, to prove his fitness. And, if you listen to the sounds coming out of the Bok camp, they are fairly confident that he will make it. If he doesn't make it, obviously that's a huge blow in terms of captaincy. It's a huge blow in terms of what Kolisi brings as a player, because I think he's fairly unique. You don't have a like-for-like replacement for him in the Bok team. I mean, there are other players with wonderful virtues, wonderful qualities, and they bring different characteristics, but it won't be a like-for-like replacement. So it will be a huge blow. Reaching for panic button, I don't think we need to do that, because I think the Boks are quite adaptable. There are enough skilled players to fill that role. And as I said, I mean, there are different skill sets that you can deploy in that number 6 jersey. So I wouldn't reach for panic button just yet.
Brenden, Limbok has got a target on his back. Whether it's a positive one or a negative one, we can only but wait and see, when that whistle, goes off, and when it goes off again after 80 minutes. He doesn't really have that much experience playing with Southern Hemisphere nations, Southern Hemisphere players, but he's got a fair deal of experience playing with the Northern guys, and he's proven just how really capable he is against those guys, looking at what he did in the URC. How much pressure is there on him, firstly from himself, secondly from yourself and Liam, and as the media that is, and then thirdly from the general South African rugby-loving public? Should he be concerned about how much pressure there is on him to perform?
I think that there's a lot of pressure on him from the public more than anything else. I don't think so much from guys like Liam and myself, although I suppose we do put a bit of pressure on any player in the team as well. I spoke to Morena this week. I actually asked him that question. He answered it quite candidly. He said, look, I know they're coming for me, and I know I'm going to be targeted, but I know what I have to do. And he's been around long enough. He is 25. While he might not have many international caps, he's got enough experience to direct the Springbok backline, and he wouldn't have been picked if the coaches don't have the confidence in him. Of course, that's all great in theory, but you've got to do it on the field, and this is his test. If he wants to go to the World Cup, he's got to perform at this level, and the Boks are backing him to do so. And I think we're a bit thin at fluff, and we need somebody to come through, and Marnie's proven that consistently. He didn't have a great URC final, let's be honest, but he's been consistent throughout the season against international opposition. So there's no reason why he can't do it today.
On that score, what we have to remember, last year against Wales, the Boks had a terrible first half at Loftus. Elton Jantjies was at the half. Things didn't go the Boks way. There were changes made at half-time. So the Loftus crowd could also get on your back. And I think it's one of those things that Manie must make sure. Get a good start, get on the front foot, and put those ghosts or potential ghosts to rest very, very early. So that's part of his challenge.
Yeah. 011-537-9431. We are still calling for you to call in and just share your opinions, and of course help us answer this question. Can the Springboks do it as they did in 2019? Win the Rugby Championship, shortened version of it, and go on to win the Rugby World Cup happening in France. And of course, while you are calling in, think about this question as well. Are you one of those people that are expecting the world of Limbok, the world of a Jean Klein. Of course, these are men that are coming in and looking to prove their mettle, to really stamp their authority and say to Jacques Nienaber, you do not want to leave me out of that World Cup team going over to France, because I can help South Africa win the World Cup. So 011-537-9431 is the number you can call. Juandre, I'm coming back to you, and I want to ask you this question. It's 3 matches in the Rugby Championship. Is it enough to essentially assess just how far we are as a Springbok team, how far Jacques Nienaber is as a head coach, as well as his technical team, of course, Deon Davids and Mzondile Stick, or should we wait for the World Cup?
I believe it's enough because you also don't want to play too many games going up to World Cup, because there's always risk of getting injuries. And I do believe that they, to some extent, already know who's majority of their squad, and there's certain areas of question marks where there's always, players that move on, and there's other younger players or different players that, there's opportunity that opens up for them. So I believe it's enough rugby building up to the Rugby World Cup. The competition's good enough as well. If you look at the pool that we are in the World Cup, so I believe that it's enough.
We've got Jody Buerta coming to us from Pretoria. Of course, that is where this first Rugby Championship encounter against the Wallabies is going to be happening. Firstly, a very good morning to you, Jody. Thank you so much for calling in. Are you going to be at Loftus Versfeld? It is a sold-out occasion, or are you going to be watching from home?
No, I'm going to be in Loftus Versfeld. I travel from King Williamstown up to Pretoria to be at Loftus Versfeld watching the Boks live.
Oh, that's beautiful. So tell me, do you think that the boys can do it this year, that they can repeat what they did in 2019, or is it too much of an ask?
Definitely. I saw the boys yesterday at Loftus Versfeld with the captain's run. I saw them. They are very enthusiastic, and they are.
It looks like we lost Jody Buerta, but he did say, of course, that he is essentially has got the faith in the boys to do it, especially given what he has been seeing in terms of their preparations. We've also got Reggie, who himself is also in the capital city. Reggie, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. Are you going to Loftus Versfeld as well? All right, it looks like we don't have Reggie yet, but we will hopefully try and get him back again. The number, 011-537-9431. I do have a panel of 3 experts, a former Springbok lock, Juandre Kruger, as well as esteemed writers, that is Liam Del Carme and Brenden. Now, let me try and go back to Reggie. Reggie, good morning. You're calling us from Pretoria. Are you going to be at Loftus Versfeld today?
Hi.
Reggie, can you hear me? Are you going to be at Loftus Versfeld this afternoon?
No, it's not Reggie. Jody's still speaking, sir.
Oh, Jody, you're still with us. Actually, now that while I still have you actually on the line, Jody, are you confident that Siya Kolisi can make it in time, especially for the warm-ups? Never mind the World Cup itself.
Yes, I'm confident, and Siya's been a good leader for our team into the World Cup. Well, we've got quite a bit of backup players that can come to on the number 6 jersey, but I believe Siya's still strong and he's still young. He should make it for the World Cup, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Jody. We'll leave it there with you. Reggie, I believe you have joined us now. A very good morning to you. You're calling us from Pretoria, yes?
Hello.
Reggie, good morning. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Reggie, yes, good morning. You are on eNCA. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. I was just asking the question, at least I'm going to pass the same one I passed to Jody, to ask, are you confident in Siya Kolisi making it for this World Cup to help lead the team to defend their title?
Yes, of course. I'll be at Loftus Versfeld this weekend, go watch the Boks. But Siya Kolisi has always been the best player for the Boks. He's been a good captain. I don't see why he shouldn't be played for the Boks. But when coming back to John Klein is a very good player. I've watched him play for Ireland and stuff like that. I think he will dwell in well for the Boks. So we have all the confidence for the Boks. We are so happy and excited. We're going to go watch them beat Australia. And Australia never beat us in Loftus. So, yeah, all the best to the Boks.
I hope the guys are listening to you right now, Reggie, as you say that they are going to beat the Wallabies. No pressure on them. I believe we also have Monzo on the line just to share their opinion. A very good morning to you, Monzo. Thank you very much for calling into eNCA. The question is simple. Can we do what we did in 2019? Rugby Championship and World Cup titles? All right, it seems as though we do not have Munzo there, but it seems as though we do have Sean calling us from the Western Cape. A very good morning to you, Sean. Thank you very much for joining the conversation. Can the Boks do it? Sean, good morning. You're on eNCA. All right, it looks like we don't have Sean at the moment. Liam, let me come back to you then. You know, there seems to be a great deal of confidence in the Boks, and yet South Africans have not watched them play since last year, November. And that says a lot. You know, that says there is a great deal of faith, especially in a World Cup year. You seldom see that kind of enthusiasm for a team that has gone through so much in the last 6, 7, maybe even 8 months. Is that something that South Africa, at least the national team, can bank on?
Look, I mean, I think they deserve that confidence. They are the defending champions. They started from a low base last time out. You have a very experienced squad of winners. They didn't just win the Rugby Championship in 2019. They won the World Cup. They went on to beat the British and Irish Lions. That obviously creates expectation. So, you know, you then also look at the end of year tour last year. They didn't beat Ireland. They ran them desperately close. They were a little undercooked in that game, but they ran Ireland close. Then they got close again the following week against France, almost beat them in Marseille. And then they did very well beating Italy and England. Yeah. And those are, of course, the last memories the Bok fans have of their esteemed team playing. So you can understand why there's expectation, you can understand why there is confidence. And I think that's the kind of confidence or expectation the Boks would want. You know, your followers need to have, you know, this expectation of you that you will do well. That's why people will flock to Loftus. They'll sell out all the tickets. They'll sell the merchandising. You know, so you know that system supports itself in that way. So I think that's the kind of expectation that they would absolutely crave.
As we round up a conversation here on eNCA this morning, I believe we have Sean back with us from the Western Cape. Sean, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining into the conversation. I will ask you this question. With everything that some of the callers have said and even my panelists here, when you've got a New Zealand team that didn't like how they played in the last World Cup, and you've got an Ireland team and a France team which is hosting the World Cup, you know, firing on all cylinders at the moment, how much confidence can you really realistically have in the Springboks?
Well, good morning to everyone. My confidence is quite high. I'm just a guy for statistics, and if you look at it, every time we win the World Cup, we win the Tri-Nations, but the time frame in it is every 12 years, which, if you look at the stats, is a little bit worried. And this now is just 4 years after the World Cup. So I'm pretty confident we can do it again. I'm just worried about that little stat if you go according to that. That's my only issue I've got with that.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for calling from the Western Cape. All that matters, I think my panelists, South Africans, will take from it is that there is that confidence. And Paul, you are calling us, of course, from the Free State. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. It is just a simple question. We did it in 2019, and we did it with Siya Kolisi and the boys. Can we do it once again? Can we relive, you know, that moment when we had, you know, of course, our late great commentator Juandre Kruger, who was saying, Likashu, Shampopo, you know, when of course we had that try coming from Magazole Mapimpi. Can we see that moment once again when we head over to France for the World Cup?
Good morning, Chief, with your listeners there of eNCA. Lest we forget, we must first start from the beginning. Hello?
Yes, sir, Paul, we can hear you loud and clear. Continue.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm saying lest we forget, we should first start by the first things. We always say first things first. And I always believe that with Christ, our Lord, we can do all because he gives us strength. That's where we should start. And secondly, I'm very, very confident with regard to the boys that we can relive this thing and repeat it. Like the one caller said.
I will hold.
All right, it seems as though we have lost Mpho, but we continue the conversation. The number that the likes of Mpho and Sean are calling on, of course, is 011-537-9431. Juandre, are we looking a little too far ahead? You know, because we've been talking the World Cup, we're talking lifting the title. I'm already talking about, you know, the reliving of that moment of our former colleague, Juandre Kruger, when he was celebrating that one try from Magazole Mapimpi. Am I getting a little too ahead of myself? should the focus solely be on the next 80 minutes, the first 80 minutes of the year for the Springboks, which is happening at Loftus Versfeld? Should we focus all of our energies only on the Wallabies?
See, there's not one player in that squad that doesn't have passion. So the players and the coaches, it's impossible not having the Rugby World Cup in the back of their minds. But we're all very excited for that, and we're all very excited for Test match rugby. So you just can't, not think about the Rugby World Cup. But you've got 80 minutes in front of you. You need to, there's players that want to prove themselves to make sure they get selected, and not miss out to the Rugby World Cup, as we've spoken before. And it's this exciting World Cup that's coming up. So it's going to be a tough Test match, without a doubt. Eddie's got a lot to prove, and there's a lot of Springbok. There's some new players in the squad that's got something to prove. So we're up for a great Test match, and we're very excited for that.
Brenden, Nell, I'm going to come back to you in just a moment, of course, as we talk about the importance of platforms such as yours and Liam's, which is your guys' podcast, The Last Drop. But before I come to you, Munzo, you are calling us from Pretoria, the capital city, the host city of today's Rugby Championship encounter. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. How much confidence do you have, given everything that you would have listened to this morning so far from my panelists and the other listeners? Munzo from Pretoria, good morning. Can you hear me? All right, it seems as though Munzo did drop, but at least she's watching the conversation and has an opinion to share like all the other callers. Of course, the number that all of our callers have been ringing us on is 011-537-9431. Brenden, I'm coming to you. The importance of the media's role in our World Cup and Rugby Championship campaign. Yourself, Liam Del Carme, even a former Springbok lock like Juandre Kruger, who of course offers his opinion on media platforms such as eNCA. How important is our job to essentially convey the right message, be it on eNCA, be it on radio stations, or be it on platforms such as the Last Drop podcast?
Well, I think what we do is we are conduit between the team and the fans as such. And we are obviously there to help convey the messages and obviously to hold them to account at times as well. I think in a time like this, fans don't always get the opportunity to get close to the team. And we have that opportunity. And so we can ask the questions that the fans don't necessarily get the opportunity to ask. So, in a big way, we almost, I won't say gatekeepers, or more messengers on behalf of the team, but we have also the role to ask the difficult questions of the Boks. And sometimes they don't enjoy us asking those questions, to be very honest, when things don't always go well. But, it's important. There's an important relationship between the media and the team as such, and to make sure that they're held accountable as well.
It's important to make sure you hold a Springbok accountable, particularly in a World Cup year, because this is the one time that people that aren't even, your fancied rugby fans will definitely be watching and will be buying that green and gold jersey, especially the beautiful jerseys that have come out, of course, from Nike this year. Juandre, you guys, as Brenden said, as Springboks, you sometimes don't like the media for the kinds of questions they ask, but all they're really doing is just, speaking on behalf of the fan that doesn't have that direct access to you. But there are sometimes misconceptions about a Springbok and what it is you guys do go through, be it in camp or even in your personal lives. Just what are some of those misconceptions? What are some of the things that you feel South Africans, especially in a World Cup year, do need to know?
So the media is doing a wonderful job, especially sporting-wise. We've got some of the best sporting media in the world. And, especially with the Springboks has done so well at Rugby World Cup. So it's never nice, to hear, not good things. But, you need to take, if you're in a public eye and you're playing sports, that's part of the game. It's psychological, a part of the game is also the psychological aspect. How can the team deal with the media? How can the coaches deal with the media? We know there's an important aspect. It's the refereeing, from this Test match building up to the Rugby World Cup, the refereeing is going to be very, very important. How the players and the coach are going to be managing the referees, how they're going to be going into the World Cup, the confidence, the whole view, because, as you've got the rugby team there, you've got the referee team as well. So, and there's that's an important aspect for us in this Rugby World Cup. There'll be, it's always this rugby. There'll always be 50-50 calls, and you want those 50-50 calls to be going to, to the Springbok side, and you want to be playing positive rugby. You want to be on the front foot at the whole time. So you don't want to be feeling that the media is against you and the public's against you. So you want to strategically use the media to your advantage, and looking forward to a great Rugby Championship and a World Cup building up.
Liam, as we draw closer to the end of our conversation, between the 2015 Rugby World Cup and the 2019 Rugby World Cup, the Springboks went through 3 coaches. That is Heineke Meyer, of course, and then there was also Alistair Coetzee, who unfortunately didn't have the best of times there. And then Rassie Erasmus came in. There were concerns leading up to that Japan World Cup as to will South Africa be able to do it. The concerns grew even larger when we went over to Washington, D.C., only to go lose to Wales there as well. But then it all turned around, Will there be any heavy scrutiny? And if so, will it be deserved if Jacques Nienaber and Siya Kolisi and the boys do not win this title? I mean, yes, the Rugby Championship is important as well, but we always prefer to play 6 matches instead of 3. Will there be deserved heavy scrutiny, should there be, if we do not win this World Cup? And dare I say it, if we don't even make it to the final?
There's always going to be scrutiny, irrespective. At the end of every World Cup, there will be a big debrief. In the case of the current team, you must remember the head coach leaves the Springbok setup after this World Cup. He'll go to Leinster. So there will be some big questions that they need to ask anyway. They need to plot the next 4 years. Rassie Erasmus is still in charge as director of rugby, so he already will have a fair idea of where he wants to take the Bok team over the next few years. The heavy scrutiny, that just is part of the territory. That will always happen. One has to be realistic, though. I think the field, in terms of World Cup, is packed with many contenders, perhaps more so than last time out. But there again, South Africa have proven themselves over the years when it comes to World Cups, when it comes to those big knockout games, how you deal with the pressure, how you get yourself up for a big game and perform in the big moments. We've got those players, there's absolutely no doubt. It's about doing those finer things, the little details that produces champions that we need to focus on now so that we can do it again. There's no doubt we have the personnel, there's no doubt that we have the brains trust to do it. If we fall short, we fall short. We ask those tough questions, but I don't think if we sit here now that we should have any doubts that we don't have the right people in charge.
Liam, thank you so much for coming through into studio and just having this conversation. It has been definitely an interesting and thought-provoking conversation. Thank you so much for coming through. That is Liam Del Carme, of course, a seasoned senior writer of rugby. And I've also had, of course, part of my 3-person panel. We've had Juandre Kruger, of course, who's a former Springbok lock, as well as Brenden, who himself is an esteemed rugby writer, senior rugby writer. Of course, Liam, as well as Brenden, will be sharing more of their opinions on their podcast. That is The Last Drop, as we build up to not only just the Rugby World Cup, but also as we try and tackle what has been happening in the Rugby Championship. But the biggest thank you from me and eNCA goes to you, our viewer, who's been engaging us, of course, on our viewer line, especially those that have called, and even those that did not call but did have that opinion as you were watching. We really do appreciate the time that you've spent with us this morning. That is where we're going to be leaving it for this particular segment from the Sports Desk.